People at tram stops tell on themselves when they think nobody is watching. Of course, couples are the easiest. Two hands, one shared scarf. Nothing useful, but people still call it proof. The tram shelter near the river had an old coffee ad with a woman laughing into a paper cup. The plastic panel around it was scratched, and someone had pushed a blue chewing gum wrapper into the metal seam. I remember that wrapper clearly. I cannot remember the first thing I said when he finally arrived. I was Sloane Whitaker then, 34, Senior Crisis Communications Strategist at Vale and Cross. My job was to take ugly facts and make them sound survivable. Executives called when screenshots appeared. Founders called when apologies needed to sound human but not expensive. That evening, I had finished a client call at 6:12. The microwave clock in our office kitchen said 6:18 when I threw away soup I had not touched. Mina was eating salted almonds from a mug and asked whether my husband was meeting me. I said he was, of course. She said men understood absence better than patience. My husband arrived 26 minutes late with tea in a dented silver thermos. He had bought it years before after I burned my tongue at a winter market and complained for 2 full streets. He still remembered the temperature. He still forgot that showing up mattered before repair. He said there had been an issue at the restoration site, something about old brick and rainwater. Then he asked softly whether something had shifted between us. I told him nothing had shifted. He looked at me, then started listing fixes. Earlier calendar blocks, fewer late calls, better planning. He meant care. I heard management. At home, the hallway smelled like our neighbour's fried onions. My silver wishbone keychain clicked against the lock. We ate leftover rice from blue bowls while his phone lit up on the table. Matteo's name appeared before my husband picked it up. 3 words on the screen. Promotion dinner confirmed. 1 smile from my husband before he even looked at me. That should not have mattered as much as it did. The rooftop greenhouse bar had fake olive trees in white pots and real water dripping from the glass ceiling. It was the kind of place people chose when they wanted casual pictures that looked expensive. My husband stood near a heater with Layla, talking about permits and old stone, and I sat with a sweating glass of tonic water I did not want. Matteo arrived late because Matteo always arrived late, in a way people forgave. He kissed Nina on the cheek, touched my husband's shoulder, and then looked at me as if I had entered the room after him, even though I had been there for 20 minutes. Of course that landed. 3 chairs, 2 empty glasses, 1 look from a man who was not trying to solve me. He asked about my award at the agency. Not the polite version, not the quick version. He asked what account had won it, and whether the client had cried when I saved them. I told him clients never cried in front of communications people unless they wanted something. He laughed like I had handed him a secret. My husband was across the table nodding while Layla explained a problem with her landlord. He was kind that way, available to other people in clean, practical squares. I told myself it was not wrong to enjoy being listened to by someone who did not turn every feeling into a checklist. Matteo said I could make a train crash sound elegant. I said that was both my gift and my invoice category. Nina laughed, but the sound was short. Priya, who had been pulling apart a rosemary breadstick, looked between us and then looked down. Later, when the group moved toward the side railing, Matteo asked if I would ever help him with language for his photography site. He said he was tired of sounding like every other event photographer with a drone and a font subscription. I said maybe. He said he would send samples. I said he should. That was the first safe decision. Work language. Public setting. Nothing to explain. Mina was not there, but she was present in the way phones make people present. She sent a message from her client retreat asking if the famous best friend was as charming as he looked in photos. I typed that he was harmless. Then I added, mostly. She sent back a laughing face and said, harmless men did not usually need the word mostly. I should have stopped at harmless. By the time my husband and I got home, the apartment smelled of dishwasher steam, and the basil plant on the windowsill had dropped 2 leaves onto the counter. His laptop was open on the dining table. Mine was still in my bag. Mateo's message came through on the shared tablet because my accounts were badly synced and I had never cared enough to fix it. He had sent 3 photo links and 1 line about coffee. I deleted the notification before my husband came back from the bathroom. Not the message, just the notification. A small edit. I made small edits for clients every day. Remove 1 sharp edge. Leave the story standing. My husband returned with toothpaste at the corner of his mouth and asked why I was standing by the table. I told him I was checking tomorrow's schedule. He said I had the face I got when a client was lying badly. I said work had been long. He accepted that because he was tired, and because tired explanations had kept our home running for years. The next weekend was Priya's birthday brunch. The cafe had green tiles, paper menus that curled at the edges, and a tiny jar of brown sugar cubes on every table. Priya had ordered too many pastries because she believed extra food could stop awkwardness. It could not. Mateo sat beside Nina but leaned across the table when I spoke. Layla sat beside my husband, her gold hoop earring flashing each time she turned her head. Mina kept texting, asking for updates like she was watching a show I had invited her into. Someone asked about marriage because Priya's cousin had just gotten engaged. My husband said marriage was less about big promises than daily maintenance. He meant it warmly. He said it like a man who believed maintenance was holy. I made a joke about husbands becoming furniture after a while. Useful, expensive, and always in the same place. Mateo laughed too loudly. Priya looked at her plate. Layla's fork stopped above a square of spinach pie. My husband smiled first, because he had years of practice giving my sharper lines somewhere soft to land. Then the smile left his mouth and stayed in his eyes too long, trapped there. On the walk home, he asked about one incident. He did not accuse me of a mood. He asked why I told Mateo about the agency award in detail when I had only told him the headline. He named the award dinner he had missed 6 months earlier. He named the flowers. He asked what happened to us after that night. I said he had answered the question himself. He had missed the dinner. He said he had sent flowers and called as soon as the wall at the site was safe. His voice stayed careful, which made it worse. I heard a man presenting evidence, not a husband asking to be let back in. I told him he always came with proof after the moment was gone. He looked at a dog tied outside a pharmacy and said he did not know how to answer that. Wrong answer. Not cruel. Just wrong enough. That night, I replied to Mateo's coffee message after my husband went to shower. I wrote that Wednesday might work, then put my phone face down under client briefs. Priya sent a message the next morning saying brunch had felt strange and that she hoped I was okay. I answered with a heart and no words. Her next reply came 12 hours later. Nobody left. Not yet. They just stood a little farther away. Orison Grill smelled like citrus polish and grilled lemon. The private dining room had amber glass lamps, cream walls, and a long table set with heavy forks that made every place setting seem more serious than the people sitting there. It was my husband's promotion dinner. His firm had booked the room because old buildings had finally made him important enough for speeches. There were 12 of us, maybe 13 if I count the junior architect who kept leaving to take calls near the coat rack. I remember the waiter's black sneakers had a white scuff on the left toe. I cannot remember whether I ate the fish or only moved it around. My silver wishbone keychain lay beside my wine glass because I had dropped my keys on the table when we arrived. My husband had teased me before about that habit. The man could find damage inside 100-year-old walls, but could not see me sitting beside him with my own cracks showing. Layla sat near him, proud in a guarded way. Priya sat across from me, quieter than usual. Nina wore a green blouse and kept touching Mateo's sleeve. Mateo sat 2 chairs down and caught my eye like we were sharing notes no one else could read. Of course I liked it. 3 glances. 2 small smiles. One room where my husband was being praised for knowing how to preserve things. The first toast came from his boss, who spoke about patience. The second came from Layla, who said my husband had always believed broken things deserved time before judgment. People laughed softly. My husband looked embarrassed and pleased. A waiter came in with extra bread at the wrong moment and asked who had requested more butter. Nobody had. He stood there for 5 seconds, holding the little white dish, while all of us waited for the interruption to leave. Real life has terrible timing. It does not wait for the room to be ready. Then my husband stood. He thanked the firm. He thanked Layla. He thanked Matteo for being the friend who had seen every bad haircut and every bad apartment. Then he thanked me. He said I had carried him through hard years, that I had taught him how to speak when silence was safer, and that once, after a failed anniversary dinner, he had told me he owed me any wish I wanted. The room warmed around that line. People love a soft marriage story, especially when dessert is coming. I held the stem of my glass. My fingers were dry from the napkin. Matteo was watching me. My husband was watching me too, but his face had that open, hopeful look that asked me to step into the version of us he was offering. I stood. I said I remembered the wish. The room turned toward me. Cutlery paused. Someone's phone buzzed on the table and stopped. I said that if I was being honest, and I was tired of pretending honesty was rude, my wish would be one night with Matteo. Then I said at least Matteo looked at me like I was still alive. The sentence did not shout. It did not need to. Nina removed her hand from Matteo's arm. The movement was small, but the space it left was clear. Priya's mouth opened and closed once. Layla stared at me with no surprise, which was the first thing that irritated me. Not shock. Recognition. Matteo gave a short laugh that died before it became useful. My husband put his napkin down beside his plate. Not on the plate. Beside it. Folded once. He thanked everyone for coming and said the restaurant had been kind to give them the room. He did not look at me while he said it. That was his response. No raised voice, no public scene. He took my public wound and refused to bleed where I had placed it. In the corridor outside the private room, the wall had framed photos of old city bridges. My husband stood under one with a cracked black frame. He asked whether I understood what I had just done. I said he was proving my point by making the room about his feelings. He said I had used his best friend's name in a room full of people who respected him. He said I had pulled Nina into it. He said I had made our marriage into a table joke and then asked everyone to sit with it. I heard control. I heard shame dressed as calm. I heard a husband who could finally speak because other people had seen him hurt. So I said he should not worry, because he had always been better at being admired than being wanted. His hand moved toward his jacket pocket and stopped. For 1 second his face had no plan on it. That should have reached me. Instead, I looked past him toward the dining room door, because I needed to know who had heard. We returned to the table. The heat there was visible. Priya was cutting her dessert into pieces so small they were almost crumbs. Nina had moved her chair a little away from Matteo, enough for only a woman to see. Layla was speaking to the junior architect with a polite voice that did not belong at that table anymore. Mina texted, asking how the dinner was going. I wrote that I may have made a speech. She sent laughing faces and asked whether I had finally said something real. The silver wishbone keychain was no longer beside my glass. I looked under the napkin, then near the bread plate. My husband had taken it. He was standing near the door with his coat over one arm, the keychain hidden somewhere in his jacket. A small crack opened then, not in him, in me. I saw the table from above for half a second. My husband alone near the door, Matteo busy with his phone. Nina turned away. Priya not looking at anyone. Layla watching like a witness who had stopped being family. For half a second, I understood that I had not made myself chosen. I had made myself seen. Those are not the same thing. Then Matteo looked up and gave me the smallest smile, careful and private, and I closed the door on that thought. I told myself the room was uncomfortable because I had told the truth before they were ready. I told myself women always looked cruel when they stopped making pain convenient. Of course, that sounded better. 3 minutes later, Mina sent another text asking for details. I started typing, then saw that she had deleted her laughing faces from the thread. When we left, my husband walked ahead of me to the car. He opened my door out of habit. That was the cruelest part. He still knew the movements. Nobody spoke on the drive home. The radio played a weather update about rain after midnight. My husband's jacket pocket clicked once when he turned the wheel, silver against keys, my wishbone trapped with his things. 2 nights after the dinner, the apartment smelled like lemon cleaner because I had scrubbed the counters at 11 after not eating dinner. The microwave clock said 11:07. I remember that. I do not remember whether I called my mother back that week, though she left 2 messages and 1 long sigh in the third. My husband had been sleeping on the sofa. Not dramatically. He folded the blanket every morning and placed his pillow on the armchair like a guest who did not want to leave evidence. His coffee mug stayed by the sink, rinsed clean. His shoes were lined up near the door. Of course, order became his language again. 3 folded blankets, 2 closed doors, 1 husband who had stopped asking me to explain the joke. Layla came by for his old project files. She texted him from downstairs instead of ringing the bell. When she came in, she smelled like cold air and peppermint gum. She wore the camel coat I had once said made her look like a divorce lawyer, back when insults could still pass as personality. She greeted my husband first. Then she asked him where the files were. I said she could still speak to me. Layla said she was speaking in the room. Calm. Not loud. Worse. I told her family always protected family, of course. She looked at the cleaned counter, the dry sink, the sofa blanket. Then she said some people protected what other people treated like material. It was almost a good line. I would have respected it more if it had not been aimed at me. My husband told her the files were in the hall cupboard. He did not tell her to be kind. That was new. He had always softened Layla around me, and me around Layla, like he was smoothing plaster before it dried. Now he let the rough edge remain. After she left, he sat on the sofa with my silver wishbone keychain in his palm. He had placed it there beside him like an object from a museum. The television was off. Rain tapped at the balcony door. Somewhere upstairs, a child dragged something across the floor. He said he had been scared for a long time that he was failing me in a way he could not fix. He said he kept trying to repair the schedule, the dinners, the house things, because those were the tools he had. He said that when I made the toast, he understood that he had been trying to repair a wall while I was standing on the other side of it asking him to open a door. He did not say it beautifully. He said it slowly, like each sentence cost him. I looked at his thumb rubbing the wishbone charm. The silver had a tiny nick near the curve from the time I dropped my keys in a parking lot after a client gala. He had found them under a delivery van while I stood in heels complaining about the cold. For one slow minute, the apartment looked different, not like a room where somebody had won, not like a stage, like a place where a man had been trying badly and a woman had been translating badly, and both of them had kept using the wrong dictionary. My husband was not performing dignity. He was holding a small object because he did not know where else to put his hands. A door opened inside me. Behind it was not guilt. It was smaller and more useful. It was the possibility that he had loved me in a language I had refused to learn because it did not sound like desire. It was the possibility that I had taken his quiet and made it into proof before he could defend it. Then he placed the wishbone keychain beside the small tray where we kept our rings and spare coins. The sound was light, metal on ceramic. I closed the door. I told myself his dignity was punishment. I told myself this was how controlled men won, by becoming calm enough to make women look messy beside them. I picked up the keychain and clipped it onto my bag with a hard little snap. Then I offered my controlled, partial truth. I said Matteo made me feel heard, but nothing had happened. I said the toast was cruel, yes, but it came from somewhere real. I said maybe my husband should ask why I wanted to say it instead of only counting who heard it. He did not take the bait. My husband said the issue was no longer one sentence at dinner. He said it was the jokes before it, the deleted warmth after it, The way I made him apologize for being hurt. He said it was Matteo's name becoming a tool in my hand. That was the first time he said Matteo's name like it had weight. My phone buzzed. Mina had finally answered a message from the night before. She said she was buried with work, but that I should not let anyone make me feel guilty for wanting to be seen. 2 minutes later, she sent another message asking whether my husband knew anything concrete. Concrete. That word stayed with me. I said no. My husband looked at the phone in my hand and asked if I was talking to Mina. I said yes. He asked whether she was helping our marriage or helping my story about it. Wrong question. Too clean. Too ready. I said at least she listened before diagnosing me. He stood then and walked to the hall cupboard. He pulled out a brown envelope, not hidden, not dramatic, and began placing printed receipts, bank statements, and a copy of our lease inside it. He did it at the dining table where we used to wrap birthday gifts. He aligned the edges with 2 fingers. I asked what he was doing. He said he was getting organized. No official words, no threat, just paper. I laughed because the alternative was to ask him to stop. I said he was making a file because feelings were too difficult. He did not answer. He wrote the date on the envelope in blue pen. That was the silent decision marker. The pen, the envelope, the keychain back on my bag like I had won something. After midnight, when he closed the bedroom door from the outside and returned to the sofa, I opened a hotel website on my laptop. The page loaded slowly. A couple in white robes smiled from the banner like people paid to never argue. I searched for a suite near Matteo's studio. Not because I had decided everything. That was what I told myself. Because I wanted proof that I still could. By Friday, the apartment had split into territories. My husband used the sofa, the hall cupboard, the left side of the bathroom sink. I used the bedroom, the dining table, and the right side of every argument. The basil plant had gone brown at the edges because neither of us wanted to be the person who watered it first. Of course, even a plant became a position. 3 unread messages from Priya. 2 missed calls from my mother. One husband moving through our home like he had already packed the air around him. Matteo had been slower all week. Not gone. Just careful. He asked whether Nina knew about the dinner. He asked whether Layla had said anything. He asked if my husband was the kind of man who saved screenshots. That should have sounded ugly. I heard concern wearing practical shoes. Mina was slower too. She still liked my agency posts. She still sent me a meme about marriage being a subscription trap. But when I asked if I was wrong to be tired of being maintained, she took 5 hours to answer and said only that things sounded intense. Intense. Not brave. Not finally honest. Intense. The voluntary line came after dinner, if a handful of crackers over the sink counts as dinner. My husband was at the table with his brown envelope, adding printed pages. The printer made its dull, grinding noise from the shelf near the books. He had become logistical. I had become louder. I opened the shared laptop because mine was charging in the bedroom. He looked up. I did not hide the screen. The hotel site remembered my search from the night before. Suite near Matteo's studio. Late check-in. One night. I clicked the room. I entered the shared card. I typed my email, then changed it to the shared inbox because part of me wanted him to see it, and part of me wanted to say I had made a mistake. Both parts used the same hands. My husband watched without speaking. At 8:43, the confirmation arrived. A small sound came from the laptop. Not dramatic, just a polite chime. He asked whether I wanted to stop before this became our story. That was his final offer. Clean. No pleading. No performance. He gave me one narrow bridge and stood back from it. I said the one true thing I had left. I said he made me feel like a project he had already solved, not a woman he still wanted. He lowered his eyes to the table. His hand rested on the envelope but did not open it. He said I was right about that. He said he had failed there. Then he said his failure did not give me the right to use his oldest friendship as a weapon. The room went too still. My husband did not defend himself. That ruined the shape of my anger. It needed him to deny it. It needed him to make me repeat the line louder. Instead, he accepted the part that was his and left me holding the rest. So I sharpened it. I said that if he had wanted a loyal wife, he should have remembered I was alive before Matteo did. I said it softly because soft sentences can cut better in rooms where people are tired. He stood, took the printed hotel confirmation from the tray and placed it in the brown envelope. Then he wrote the time on the outside. 8:43 p.m. I asked if he was proud of himself. He said he was done arguing with someone who kept asking for rescue while setting fires by the door. It was not a perfect sentence. It sounded like something he had practiced and then lost halfway through. That made it worse because I could hear the person under it. He asked me to sleep somewhere else that night. He said he would organize records and speak to someone in the morning. Still no official words. Still no named threat. Just a man choosing the next step without asking me to approve it. I laughed again. Too high, too bright. I said he could not paperwork his way into being the victim. He did not answer. That silence had weight, because there were witnesses now even when the room was empty. Layla had seen the dinner. Priya had seen the brunch. Nina had seen Matteo pull away from her at the table. The shared inbox had seen the hotel booking. My husband was not collecting a story. I had been handing him one. I went to the bedroom and sent Mina 3 voice notes. In the first, I said my husband was turning everything into evidence. In the second, I said I had only booked the room because he kept acting like I would never dare. In the third, I stopped halfway and asked whether she could come over. 3 messages, 2 calls. 1 answer never came. 20 minutes later, in the group chat for Monday lunch, Mina reacted to someone's sandwich photo with a thumbs up. Her name sat there, active and useless. That was the absence. No speech from her, no explanation. Just a space where she had always been. Matteo called at 9:31. I took it in the bathroom with the fan on. He asked who knew about the booking. Not whether I was okay, not whether I had left the apartment. Who knew? I said my husband knew. He asked whether my husband had said his name. I said yes. Matteo exhaled like a man doing math. He said Nina had been asking questions since the dinner. He said the toast had put him in a bad position. He said maybe the hotel was too much for right now. I said right now was the only time that had ever mattered to him. He said that was not fair. Wrong answer again. Not cruel. Built for his own escape. I hung up first so I could pretend the line had been mine to cut. When I came out, my husband was standing near the front door with his coat on. Layla waited in the hallway, her arms folded. She must have come while the bathroom fan was running. She did not look past him to me. He said he was staying with her. I said, of course. Family. Layla finally looked at me then. Not with hate. Hate would have been easier. She looked at my bag where the silver wishbone keychain hung from the zipper, and then at the laptop still open on the dining table. My husband took 1 overnight bag. 1. He did not pack books or winter coats. He did not take the framed photo from Lisbon or the small blue bowl he liked for olives. He took the brown envelope. That was when the apartment became hollow. Not empty. Hollow. The furniture stayed. The basil plant stayed. My shoes stayed near the bedroom door. The structure was there, but the load-bearing part had walked out carrying paper. I called Matteo again after they left. He did not answer. I texted that my husband had gone to Layla's and that I needed to know we were not pretending. Matteo wrote back 14 minutes later that he needed the night quiet and that we should not make anything worse. Anything worse. I stood in the kitchen and cleaned the refrigerator. At 11:46, I threw away mustard, half a lemon, and a jar of olives my husband had bought because I liked them with cheap white wine after hard client days. Then I slept in the bed alone with the hotel confirmations still open on the laptop in the other room. The apartment was quiet enough to hear the shared inbox chime once more after midnight, but I did not get up to check it. The Mediation Center conference room smelled like carpet cleaner and weak coffee. The table was too large for 4 people. My husband sat on one side with Layla beside him, not behind him. I sat across from them with a paper cup I kept turning in small circles. Of course Layla had come. 3 chairs filled, 2 folders on his side, 1 empty chair beside me. I expected a separation conversation, not gentle but manageable. I had handled worse rooms for clients. I knew how to begin with shared concern, how to admit pain without admitting fault, how to make a bad act sound like the last symptom of a long illness. Before the mediator could start, a man in a navy coat entered and asked for me by full name, Sloane Whitaker. He handed me an envelope and asked me to confirm receipt. My pen made a dot on the signature line before it made my name. Inside was a petition for dissolution of marriage with request for temporary financial and property orders. The first temporary orders hearing was listed for December 6th. I placed both hands flat on the table. My thumb rubbed the pale mark where my ring used to sit. Layla looked once at my hands and then back at the document. The mediator read the top page and said the session would need to pause because the matter had moved into a formal process. The proof was not new. That was the worst part. The dinner toast, witnessed by Layla and Priya. The hotel confirmation from the shared inbox. The booking on the shared card. The messages where I had used Matteo's name like pressure. My husband had not created anything. He had only stopped protecting me from the shape of it. I said the marriage had been dead before that dinner. The mediator asked whether I disputed making the hotel booking after my husband asked me to stop. I turned the paper cup again. The lid clicked once. Matteo exited before the rest landed. His message said he would not be involved further, that he had apologized to my husband, and that I should not contact him again. Then his profile photo vanished from the chat. I moved into a studio above a dry cleaner with 2 suitcases and 1 box of office shoes. The joint savings stayed restricted except for agreed living costs until the December hearing. Layla blocked me, Priya stopped sending invitations, and Mina kept saying we should catch up without naming a day. Matteo sent my husband a written apology and told Nina I had exaggerated, which was not fully false. At work, my managing director removed me from a crisis account because I had become too close to the kind of story we were paid to contain. I thought public desire would protect me from being invisible. It only made the private damage easier to prove. My husband had stopped seeing me clearly, and I was right about that. But I used the truth like a match in a room full of paper. The silver wishbone keychain stayed in a storage box with the spare apartment key still attached. I got my wish, and it left no one waiting for me.